Hi, my name is Megan Mayberry, and I teach in Allentown, Pennsylvania in a charter school. And I teach 11th and 12th grade art, and I'm going to go ahead and dive right into my study. So, my topic consists of aphantasia and hyperphantasia. And you're probably wondering what that is. So, my question is what are ways aphantasia, hyperphantasia, and spatial memory in general have as an impact in the art classroom and creating art? And before I go over what aphantasia is, I want you to be able to imagine a purple apple. And are you able to do this without, well, viewing this photo? If you're able to do this, then you probably have either phantasia or hyperphantasia. But there are actually people in the world that can't visualize this in their mind. And those people have aphantasia. So, aphantastic people or people with aphantasia are individuals that cannot visualize items or images in their mind or imagination. And only 2 to 5% of the world's population is actually aphantastic. And most individuals are fantastic or able to visualize images normally. On the other side of the spectrum, like I've mentioned, is hyperphantasia. So, are you able to visualize images so clear and vivid where it's almost real? If you're able to do this, then you might have hyperphantasia. So, these are individuals that visualize images so vividly that it's almost as real seeing, and only 10% of the world's population is hyperphantastic. And a little background on that, this came about when Aristotle coined the term fantasia, which means on the soul or in the imagination, in 340 BC, but they were still not aware of aphantasia and hyperphantasia yet. And those terms didn't come along till 2015. This was obviously after in 1880 when the first study was done. And during the first study, they took 100 participants, and only 10 of them out of the 100 could not visualize images in their head. So, obviously, like I said, fast forward to 2015, and that's when they coined the terms aphantasia and hyperphantasia by Adam Zeman. And this led into more studies and possible connections to trauma and autism. So, why do we need to investigate this, or why am I interested in this? So, different students may need more differentiated instruction and assessment due to this. I think we should treat this just like any other disability because it is a neurological disorder. And those that have aphantasia might not be able to visualize things in their head, but they are able to view things in front of them. So they might need more visuals, whether it's on the computer or paper, in order to help them in the art classroom. With those with hyperphantasia, they have such a vivid memory that sometimes they might not be able to execute it correctly or the way they want it on paper, and they lack the artistic skills there. So I want to be able to make this more well known to other educators because it is a fairly new concept and study. Um, and also be able to try to see if this ties into an even bigger issue through autism and trauma. For my framework and paradigm, I focused on two, and this was epistemological, which means within the scenes, because I like to work within the scenes. I like to work one on one with students. I like to be able to see what's going on in the study and just being able to make those connections as well, because there's a lot of connections that were made throughout this study. And also social constructivism, which is a pattern of meaning, finding that pattern. How do they view the world around them with not being able to visualize things in their head or being able to visualize them very vividly? And again, connections and patterns on possible trauma and people on the autistic spectrum. So my methodology and data collection, I focused on a case study because I am collecting multiple sources of information. And it also ties into psychology and social sciences as well. They also use case study a lot. And because this is a neurological disorder, I thought it tied into that more more well. So, first, they had to do a self diagnosis. I explained what the terms meant, and they were able to tell me whether they think they might have aphantasia or hyperphantasia. Three students thought they had aphantasia, and then once we did the test online, which I followed up on, I found a test online that asked you a series of questions, and you're able to say whether you visualize it vividly or not, or no image at all. And those three individuals that did self diagnose themselves, actually came out as aphantasia too. So this then led up to a follow-up interview for those that tested either hyperphantasia or aphantasia. And then this led into a drawing experiment. For the drawing experiment, I showed 3 images, one of a bedroom, one of a landscape, and one of a classroom. And each image I only showed for about 10 seconds each. They had about 3 minutes to draw each image without looking at it. And I saw if any of the drawing experiments lined up with the tests. And this led into a follow-up questionnaire to see maybe if they were on the autistic spectrum or if they suffered any past trauma, whether it was physical trauma or mental trauma. So obviously because of this and because of the sensitivity of it, I did make it known that the students can opt out of the study. They can opt out of the questionnaire, especially because it does touch on sensitive issues. I did get consent from students, and I was able to upload the form on Google Classroom where a lot of the students and the parents are, and able to get a digital signature for this. And because of this, I was able to conduct the study with all 82 of my participants initially. So I got the parental consent from the students that are under 18, and the team leader that we have for 11th and 12th grade was also aware of this. And that led into the study. So I'm going to show you some results that I have first and foremost, and what I used for the interview questions and the questionnaire. So for the initial test, let's see here. For the initial test, I had them record their answers on a Google form, and 31.7% scored hyperphantastic. Only 3, again, scored aphantastic, and the majority, which was 64.6%, scored phantastic, which is normal. This is for the drawing experiment. Those with aphantasia, this is some indications of aphantasia too. The spatial memory is very low. This person drew a river where there wasn't a river at all, so definitely quite interesting. This person is missing a lot. For hyperphantasia, they focused more on detail, and their spatial memory was very pronounced in these two. And with Fantasia, is kind of in the middle, where they kind of knew a lot of the images that were there, but they didn't really focus too much on the smaller details like those that had hyperphantasia. And then I did the follow-up questionnaire after I weeded it down to 13 participants, and 3 of them were on the autistic spectrum. And some of them did suffer from physical and mental abuse as well. And also the questionnaire was completely anonymous too, and they were able to opt out of it because it does consist of more sensitive topics. And some interesting things that I found out during my study, just a couple things, were number one, out of the 3 individuals that were aphantasia, I found out that 2 of them were actually cousins. So the both of them were in separate classes, and neither of them knew about the study or the test that they were taking. And when I interviewed them, they told me that they were cousins because it was only 2 out of 3 participants that scored aphantasia. And I've come to find out that I looked it up, and it can be hereditary. So if you have aphantasia, you might have someone close to you, a close relative in your family that might have it too. And then besides that, another thing that I noticed as well is one of my students that has aphantasia. They did suffer some mental abuse when they were younger. Of course, I don't know which student it is because it is anonymous, but they did put in their notes that they started to dream without color after the incident happened. So knowing this and possibly those ties and correlations could be tied into aphantasia as well, with the dreaming aspect of it, especially if you dream more vivid, you might have hyperphantasia too. So overall, that is my study. I know it's a lot of information to take in because I did a lot since I did a case study. And if you have any questions or if you are interested or have any recommendations, feel free to reach out. Thank you.